Welcome to another episode of Botox and Burpees. I'm here with my son, Nicholas Rhee. He's 18 years old. He is a senior in high school. And this episode is about his experience in high school, advice that he can give for others who are navigating both the college process, the high school process, and what his experiences are like. And obviously, this is just a single person's experience, but with everything that we've talked about in the past, I think it's really important to get that first person perspective. Nick actually lived it. He is now finishing up his senior year, and so I think it's a great time for him to sort of reflect on his experiences and give some advice or thoughts about what it was like for him to go through high school, and now he will be entering as a freshman at Duke University in the fall. So welcome, Nick. Thank you for guesting.
Thanks for having me on the show, Dad.
Okay. All right. So just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, what you would want them to know.
Yeah, so like my dad said, I'm senior in high school. I've gone to Dwight Englewood High School for the last 4 years, entering as a freshman. Yeah, school's wrapping up for me in about honestly less than a month, and yeah, and that's kind of like looking to close things out, and I'm glad to be on the show.
Thanks. I really appreciate you doing this. Let's start with your first early years, basically like kindergarten through 8th grade. I know you were in Ridgewood at the time. What stood out in terms of your early experiences? Anything that really was super positive or maybe super negative that you feel like might have influenced how you did later on in your high school career?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, like the main topic of this is obviously about and the main themes are about college applications and the kind of wider scope of that kind of process. And but obviously, going back to something like kindergarten, 8th grade, I'm not even thinking about anything like that back then. Honestly, my scope was so much smaller. So I think in terms of key moments I can look back on, you know, um, I always consider myself, even when I was in elementary school, to be very fortunate to have a very stable and very good education. And I just in general, felt like I had everything I needed pretty much. Like I had supportive teachers, good environment, good friends, good classmates. I was in elementary school, which it was a K through 5 program, and then you go to the middle school, local middle school, George Washington, which is a 6th through 8th grade program only. So yeah, that transition was pretty seamless, I'd say. Like they facilitate that pretty easily. And yeah, there's other kinds of prep and resources that I've also taken advantage of, thankfully, because things like extra test prep, tutoring, and obviously that's less of a factor earlier in your education. But yeah, that definitely does kind of prime you, I think, from an early age to expect to kind of go the extra mile in a sense, and taking your risks, exploring new things, what works, what direction you kind of want to go down with your academics. So yeah, I think that framing was definitely important for me, and those habits that you build are very important for high school as well. So
Mom thinks that making you guys do Kumon early, especially all that math Kumon, was helpful. And we started early. Do you think that played a role in terms of your future academic success?
yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess, I mean, it's a very easy thing to call back to, I guess, obviously, 'cause it's almost like introductory test prep in a sense. Maybe get a bit of a head start in certain courses, and yeah, honestly, I honestly don't even remember that much from those days, but yeah, we did that for a pretty long time. But I think, yeah, that definitely in those formative years, that definitely does help actually, in a sense, regardless of what program you use, I think, but between for me, that helped me feel more confident, at least in my abilities, in a sense. It felt it really felt like just reaching towards a goal in a sense. Like it made things seem very obtainable, through enough practice and through enough prep, because I was definitely seeing improvements, and it just kept that constant feeling of engagement and actualizing my own education in a sense. It kept that very front mind for me. So
I know you didn't really like it as a kid. Would you force your own kid to do something like that?
um I mean, of course, it all depends. I mean, yeah, I don't think any kid really is gonna be too partial towards extra prep or just any extra work, especially from maybe an earlier age. That concept can seem kind of foreign, but in general, I think it was a good decision, at least that at the very least it wasn't it wasn't negative to offer that kind of extra prep. You can take advantage of those resources that we're lucky to have. I guess maybe I was a parent, I think, consider the circumstances obviously, but for something like Kumon, at least it's pretty low maintenance. It's more so your child taking their learning into their own hands in a sense and just trying to make steady progress. Not too much pressure, but just kind of get the feel for what tutoring can be like and how it can play that active role in your learning in a sense. I think building up those habits and that expectation is very beneficial for kids at that age, and that's whether you stick with it or not. It's just something to keep in mind, and that if you want success in the future, these kinds of habits are very important to build. So
How about sports? I know we ran both you and Sasha through probably every possible sport known to mankind as a kid. So we did lacrosse and soccer and football and pretty much everything. And some kids really gravitate towards it, some don't. What do you remember about your early like sports experiences and how you felt about that?
um so yeah, so like I think I definitely have I guess been through. I mean, maybe not as much as some other kids, but like yeah, there's definitely experimentation that I've been going through, I guess, with like that, and like especially early in elementary school, and like that's and looking back though, like I think even if there weren't so many positive moments at the moment, at the very least, being like exposed to those kinds of perspectives and generally engaging, as anyone would, like with their peers, and which is something that all kids should do, and I'm glad I got into from an earlier age. Some kids might have a clear direction, like they really gravitate towards the sport early on. And for me, like it wasn't really like that. Like, we're not exactly like a sports centric family, so to speak. That was never really, like the focus, I guess. But I mean that variety of, again, of sports and that kind of engagement definitely didn't hurt. Slightly pushing yourself out of your comfort zone can be very valuable. And I think it probably helped me a good amount too, even though I didn't continue to play things like lacrosse or soccer for too long after. But yeah.
How about so if you had to think of any particular person from K to 8, up your whole Ridgewood experience, was there anyone that really stuck out as a mentor, someone that was super positive, someone that you still think about as part of your academic career or life?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in terms of like mentors, so to speak,
Hmm.
I think I can also name a lot of middle school teachers in a sense. Like I think, but also I think like even like going back to like first grade, like my first grade teacher, like Miss Peterson, like she was actually someone who really sticks out in my mind, actually, even from all the way back then, and she definitely kind of it was kind of my first exposure to like, oh yeah, like this public school system is very good, very supportive, and there are people here who genuinely want to get to know me as a person and a learner. I think that that was definitely a very formative experience, and that definitely helped what I could expect, what I could feel secure in, um, knowing with my education. So
That's
that
really
definitely
cool.
stuck.
I love that. I remember my grade school teachers too. Some good, some not so good. So then you transition from eighth grade in at Ridgewood to Dwight Englewood as a freshman in high school. Now I know Sasha originally was the first person in your bigger sister to go to Dwight. How did you feel about that transition? What was that like? What did you notice that was really different, or advice that you could give for anyone transitioning into another high school? What was that like for you?
Yeah, so, looking back, it definitely felt like things were moving very quickly at that time. Because I remember when she's 2 years older, so I remember even when I was in 6th grade, even before that, just lots of considerations, obviously. It also, in a sense, kind of boils down to, what does the future look like? Like, what do you want your academic future to look like? And generally that obviously is gonna pertain to college very significantly. And,
Were you thinking that at that time?
yeah, so, like, in 6th grade, honestly, not really. Like, obviously, I'm hearing inklings of it, but then obviously, I called back to that when I was in 8th grade and making that decision for myself. I was very glad that, you guys were giving me that decision. I'm very thankful for that, to be able to take control of that my own way, weigh the options. And, I think when I was looking at it, I was looking at the same thing she was in a sense. How do I like the school when I tour it? And like, what's the general perception I'm getting? What kind of opportunities do I think are available to me there? How will academics be streamlined? What's the reputation?
Did you think of all those things? Like, did you think that it would help you in terms of the academics, the activities available? Did you see that when you were considering those choices?
Yeah, so obviously, like, through things like touring, like some extra research as well. And of course, through, my sister literally going through that, that
Right.
was a huge benefit.
Yeah.
Definitely streamlined that a lot and helped me get a clear picture of what was on the table and what I could see myself doing. So I think, yeah, like obviously she had a very positive first 2 years.
Mhm.
Before I made that decision, like I thought that was all super promising, and very good indicator of, what that could bring. And again, seeing, how happy Sasha was, how happy she was at there, and, how positive environment she was having, and her experiences were being very good. And again, like she seemed like, nothing was really out of reach in a sense.
So let's talk a little bit about your relationship with Sasha, your big sister. So she's 2 years older. She's never been hesitant to give you advice. In fact, I think she probably gives you more advice than to anyone else. She obviously cares a lot about you. Um, Siblings have different relationships. Like I've seen different families, older sister, younger brother. How would you characterize like your relationship with Sasha, and how has that worked over the past couple of years?
Yeah, so, we're pretty close. I think for as long as I can remember. And yeah, she probably does give me the most advice out of anyone, I talk to. And but yeah, I'm just lucky to have that connection because obviously, certain families that can differ a lot. Never really known like my experience growing up without, having kind of someone looking over my shoulder in a sense, and someone I can just talk to about these things that, are very age specific and or very age sensitive in a sense. And you can't always get the same perspective very easily, even among your peers. But, having my sister to grow up beside me is super helpful. People always say, like in families, like, the older siblings like the guinea pig in a sense. Like, you can just see how see how they went through it, see, what some mistakes they made, what worked for them, and learn from that. So yeah, generally it's Sasha's so helpful. So much advice, so much guidance a lot of the time. Helping me make connections, helping me and these big decisions, like, going to a high school where a lot of course, like, so much of the experience is like, it's emotional, it's like personal to you.
Did you feel your temperament was the same as Sasha's or different? Like, was it, how did it contrast?
Um, yeah, I mean, we're pretty different people, honestly, in terms of like, demeanor and just general like, yeah, I guess temperament in a sense. Like in terms of like, extroversion, introversion, maybe.
Oh, yeah?
I'm more introverted,
Mhm.
but like, but yeah, like obviously, it's not just that because like in terms of because when I can see, when I was able to see how she was going through it and
Mhm.
how she was getting super involved, super active, I was like, well, I can do the same thing. I don't see why not. And like in terms of, but also like in terms of how accepting the community is and how accommodating it is for so many different kinds of students, different kinds of learners. That was something I picked up on very quickly.
Is there anything that you did that you were like Sasha gave you advice, and I know a lot of it you did follow. She's pretty successful, obviously, but was there anything you're like, I'm gonna do it a little differently, or I'm gonna do something else, not this, because I am a different person? Do you remember anything like that? Extracurricular wise, maybe course choices.
Like, for example, like in middle school, like there's an advanced math program, obviously, but there's not, any kind of like, advanced English program or like distinguishing factors. So moving into Dwight, that was actually a pretty new experience, like, not just STEM, but also, exercising your creativity in English and the arts and humanities, which,
Is that what you did?
yeah, I think I was just, in general, I was able to express those interests in a much more directed way and focused way in a sense, not only through classes, but also like through the available extracurriculars.
Which extracurriculars helped you to sort of develop those interests?
Yeah, so like in terms of, you know, things like philosophy or English or humanities or writing, any kind of thing that isn't just purely STEM, like, things like, I'm on the ethics bowl team. That was a big thing for me. We just had a really successful year, which I'm proud of, and just
Yes.
lift that up, bring to the newspaper. That was something that, I was definitely appreciative of. And other things like debate, I felt to be able to craft my identity in my own way, craft my experience as a learner. So,
What sports and extracurriculars did you do your first and second year in high school?
um, so like obviously I was kind of just looking towards basketball because that was something I wanted to continue from like middle school.
Mhm.
But of course, track was also there, and I was considering doing that as well earlier on.
So you stuck with track. You only did basketball for 2 years. So what was the difference between the two? Why'd you stick with track and not basketball?
Probably just well, I mean, I'd say skill probably has something to do with it as well. But
You're a better track person than basketball, would you?
I don't say I don't even know if I'm better or not. But it's just like I mean, it's your own thing. Like you don't have to really feel indebted to like helping the team or like worrying
Mhm.
about minutes, things like that, because it's just your own sport. It just makes it super more accessible and more individualized, which I think helps for when I'm not like pursuing sports too seriously, but I definitely want to stay active still and
Right.
build that community. So that kind of environment was, it's very complimentary
Mm.
in its nature.
What did you just run? Like, what events have you just run recently?
Yeah, so like I mean, initially in sophomore year, I started as like I just kind of started sprinting just because I wasn't really sure what to do really, and that's just a lot of what a lot of kids do. Then I was like in junior year, I was like, okay, maybe sprinting you want to try something different. Maybe you want to like try other events. And I was definitely seeing some progress in junior year. I was running the mile in 800, which is nice and difficult, but
Mm-hmm.
nice, and meeting a lot of getting closer with a lot of people through that as well. Distance program has been pretty small recently, so that's another factor of it. To kind of need more runners.
So what's your mile time average?
Yeah, so um like in junior year, I was really set with some PR like in like near the end of the year with like around like a 5:12, but
Wow.
it's not that it's not that good, honestly. But I was what I was most happy about though was just the progress I was making. And this year, I was a little less focused, so
No, you've been
so my time currently is like around like maybe like a couple like maybe like around a 5:30. Couples like it's below that, but like it's that progress part, and I'm still trying to get that as much as possible, and I'm also kind of transitioning going to 32 now more a little bit as
which is a 2 mile basically.
yeah. So that's that's something I was also a little hesitant to do, a little nervous about, but recently I've been kind of looking more towards that and just getting more mileage.
What
And
was your last 3200 time?
it was only my second time running it, and but at least I set a PR. It was like a 12:52,
That's
so that
nice.
which again was better than I expected at least. So
Right.
maybe last year I probably could have run faster, but I'm glad I'm still able to get into that rhythm.
You took the SAT early, right after your freshman year. Would you recommend that for people to do?
But most time the people just go with the typical standard trajectory of like doing it maybe like late sophomore year or like in the middle of the junior year, which thing is that so obviously that works. That's generally what is considered the standard. But and like when mom was first like talking about doing that, I was like, just really like just I really have to like, is it really necessary to do this differently? Like, is that really gonna help me in any way, or is this gonna be like just gonna make my summer more difficult? But looking back, I think I think for me at least, it was the right move. Like I was less busy freshman summer than obviously in my consecutive summers. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that leveraging that time, taking advantage of it is, it's something that helps. Depends on what you think is best for you, what your circumstances are, whether how busy you are. But I think for me, at the very least, taking it during freshman summer was a good choice.
Do you remember the test prep, like how intensive it was? Was it fun to do that summer?
It wasn't fun
Yeah.
at all, but like I mean, taking a lot of practice tests, and of course, it also depends on the kind of prep you do in a sense. Because for me personally, I was in like this summer program that was specifically curated for the SAT.
Right.
And it had very strict timetables. It was meant to prepare you over a specific amount of time and go over specific parameters. For a lot of kids, that can help structure the process. I mean, it definitely is at the very least for standardized test prep, such as SAT, ACT. I think that it's definitely something where a structured, focused, like regimented prep is very helpful.
So speaking of structure,
Yeah.
talk about developing your study habits, your time management skills. What have you developed over your 4 years in high school in terms of what kind of person are you in terms of how you study, how you prep, your time management?
Yeah. So I think time management skills definitely were something that you kind of I think I cultivated kind of early on, maybe like middle school. I mean, it's something that I think inherent to me. I'm just kind of like I just I just like am very passionate about bettering myself as a learner and doing the work that's necessary. So I think that I had a good enough foundation going into high school.
Mhm.
Obviously, like there's things I could do a lot better, things I could improve on, but in general, like you know, um,
Are you very regimented and structured where you have a schedule, or are you more of a procrastinator and you let it go until the last second?
also like a mix. Like I don't know, like I mean, I can be more disciplined at times. Like I could definitely not procrastinate, but also sometimes I guess maybe when I'm feeling like it or when it's just the time presents itself, like I'm like I can also turn on the side of me where I'm doing or more disciplined and more structured in how I'm doing things. But it depends on the way that you want to take advantage of what's available to you, what kind of person you are, and there's so many methods you can use, so many strategies, so many.
Are there any strategies that you use in particular?
Not really. Like, I mean, it's like like I don't use like the Pomodoro really, but I know that works for some people. But also like, I think in general, it's just a matter of mindset.
Yep.
So it's what if you want to make that change, if you feel like you want to make a change in your habits, you can do that.
So you've been pretty happy with how you've been doing with your study habits and your time management.
I think it's worked. It can always be better though. So I think that's something I still want to improve on. But
What are your time sucks? What are the things that sort of you really enjoy doing that are not academic that sort of, take you away from things?
um. I don't. I think in general, it's just probably like scrolling. That is kind of, I think, every kid's
Phone surfing?
every high school kid's pitfall at this point.
Mhm.
Like, I mean,
Do you keep track of your screen time at all?
like from time to time. Like honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of doing that. Just not because like I don't think keeping track, being aware of screen time is important isn't important, but it's also like it tends to be inaccurate in a sense, like in how it's calculated. Like
You think so?
not just I think so, like I know so. Like
Oh,
when it tells me I'm on, like I'm being honest, like when it tells me I'm on the phone for like 20 hours, just because like I left it on for like a period of time or something, or like it just miscalculated it. Because that has happened a couple times, and like when it's just some ridiculous number and
I
like.
want to look at my screen time and see what it says here. Keep going.
But yeah, I mean, that's something you should probably keep track of for sure, though.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not like someone who. 'Cause I don't think I've never really had chronic issues, so like maybe like some people to where like I definitely need where I need some kind of limiter on myself.
It says 2 hours for me, but this is my second phone. So probably if you doubled it, it would be like 4 hours a day at least, minimum for me. What would you think your screen time would be?
I mean,
Do you want to check?
okay,
Let's see.
like it usually varies kind of wildly week to week anyway, but like I can see like daily average around like 7 hours.
Whoa. Is that a lot or average for you think for kids?
I don't know. I mean, like,
Is that accurate, do you think?
um, I mean, oh, that, like, I mean, I guess. I
Mm.
mean, actually, I think that's probably one of the more accurate assessments I've seen
So
recently.
what do you use app-wise most on your phone? Like what is it that you scroll most on?
Uh, I think for me, it's probably like I'm actually a YouTube guy. I like YouTube and YouTube Shorts too. Actually, I know some people aren't that partial towards that. Like who get my age, but obviously, like the big. Obviously, I'm still also on things like TikTok,
Mhm.
Snapchat, Instagram. Like those are maybe the
And what does your feed show you mostly? Like a lot of what?
um yeah. Because I think in general, Instagram is probably the most universal app among kids, at least that I know.
Mhm.
I don't know anyone who uses Facebook, but I know everyone uses Instagram, and they use that to as the main mode of communication when it comes to all-purpose communication when it comes to
I would say
posts.
Sasha uses Snap almost more than IG, don't you think?
Uh, yeah, I mean, obviously, like, it serves different purposes, though, because like, I mean, I feel like Snap almost has become, like, the new just messenger is
Oh,
the
messenger system.
messenger app, but obviously, like, it doesn't have the same kinds of general posts or, or consistent or kinda consistent presence that something like, Instagram has, so, like, that's kinda why I see Instagram as the main form.
I know Susan and I have not done any kind of regulation for you guys on your phones. Like we got you guys phones pretty early on in as kids and have not really sort of stopped you guys from using it. Is that really the best way to regulate kids in terms of phone is just to trust them with it? Because I mean some kids uh could be, maybe others can't. Like what do you think in general people's policies should be?
I mean, I can't really speak from the lens of a parent or someone who's
Right. But then
experienced
look
things
about
like that.
the your peers, like how they use their phones.
Yeah, and, like, so,
Is it even realistic to try to regulate phone use for kids?
that's the thing. In terms of the realism, I actually don't think it's that particularly realistic because, like, obviously, like, because I actually do know, like, I do know some kids do actually like have specific screen time like adjustments, like where like there's the screen time thing on iPhone, and like there's like a password that you have to enter to remove it.
Really?
Yeah, or else like you're barred from access. But I don't know. I know a lot of kids also just have the password, like, or you can just get around it, like,
What?
almost by like design though, because it's like it's almost like a nominal thing. Like, yeah, like I have screen time, and my parents said it, and they want me to use my phone less, but they also know that like I can also remove it, and like they don't really care. It's
Right.
but
So it's just like when you're driving and you see that speed limit sign and it says too fast, too fast.
sure, yeah, that's a good analogy, I think. Like, but yeah, in general, like I don't think most kids my age, and most kids my age like might say they have a problem with screen time, but like it's not really a active hindrance in a sense, and not something that like is actively like being detrimental. But of course, it's probably something that most kids I think can improve, myself included.
You know, it's funny. I sent you that article about that guy Quan, the professional baseball player, and he had a story where he was in college and he was supposed to study for a final, and the new Fallout game came out. And so instead of studying, he played that until like 3 a.m. He failed his final. He was in a tremendous amount of trouble. And it was one of those kind of realizations that like he needed to figure out how to get his life in order. Do you see your peers, anyone like that, where, they're smart kids, everyone's obviously pretty smart, but sometimes it's that sort of self-management that is lacking in terms of being able to be successful in life?
I mean, respect to him, man. I mean, follow, that's a dangerous temptation. Yeah, it's like, but yeah, like, I think that, yeah, actually, I mean, yeah, I think it's a kind of a mix. Like, it depends on, I guess, the environment you're surrounded by too, and the kinds of people you interact with. But yeah, I think, again, I feel like this is a very universal thing. Like, phone usage is something everyone's concerned about in the news, everyone in contemporary media, like, and, how much we let technology interfere with our lives. At least among people I know, but, again, it's about that self-regulation, though, is the most important part. It's the fact that, do you so I think that's what distinguishes between maybe having a specific problem and needing a change in discipline and mindset, versus, yeah, like, everyone has their pitfalls, but at the end of the day, I know what's good for me, and, this doesn't define me as a person if I make a mistake or two here.
Maybe we should all have a phone holiday, take away everybody's phone for a week
Yeah,
inside of.
well, actually, like, my school is there've been, phone-free Fridays at my school that they've been running as, like, a little event
Mm.
that they've been doing for
Did you
months.
participate in it?
I haven't done one.
Okay.
Well, I was absent one of those days, but yeah, like, it's, yeah, but, like, that's the thing, like, people are very cognizant of what this means, so at the very least, we're aware of what's good for us, and we're aware of keeping track of those things.
Yeah, well, awareness and doing are two totally
Sure,
different things.
sure.
Let's talk about your application for colleges. So, why did you choose Duke as your ED?
Yeah, so I think that decision, it was a little gradual maybe, like, 'cause, I think, I mean, it's a big decision, and, like, going into it, I was just thinking, okay, like, I know I know my sister goes to Duke. I know that we're kind of a Duke family. So, and I've always kind of been associated with the school for a while. So, like, I've just kind of had this, you know, this inherent connection as a family in a little bit of a sense. Duke, it's an amazing school, it's an amazing institution. There's so many things about it that are to love. And, after touring and after everything I'm seeing, after thing Sasha tells me too, as literally
Right,
as a sibling of someone who goes there, like
right.
that plays a huge role. It plays a huge role, obviously. That kind of puts an intention on that school
Absolutely.
that nothing else really can. So I think that, yeah, it ended up seeming like a nice choice for me, a good choice, one that wasn't forced.
I feel in retrospect now, uh, I probably would. You're right. We're a Duke family. We went to so many games. We like wore so much Duke stuff. I went to Duke basketball camps and all this stuff. And in retrospect, I think uh, I would have changed our approach to it. I think we would have tried to be more non-denominational, maybe go to different basketball games. And I know, Susan's such a huge Duke fan now, and it would have been hard, but I don't like, I don't, in retrospect, I didn't like having that pressure on you guys because it is a great school, of course, but it was the only school you guys really knew growing up. And if, I think had either of you guys not gotten in, it would have felt like it was a huge letdown to you guys, and I never wanted that to happen. And you know, luck broke both your guys' way, but I think putting that kind of unconscious pressure where all we did was have Duke stuff, all the crap that was in our house was Duke. And, like, we had Duke in the garage gym, like the sign and all of that. In retrospect, was a mistake. I never in the future would ever want to put that kind of emphasis on a particular university for my kids growing up, even if it was just not like you have to go there, but it was just surrounding you. And so in some sense, I feel badly about that. Um, Not that it's not a great school, obviously, but had we, leaned into BC as much or anything else, then I think the letdown, had you guys not gotten in, would not have been so bad.
No, yeah, like I totally get that actually, because like it's again, it's not about any kind of particular pressure, but like again, when you kind of start, because like what when I'm like surrounded by things like this, I'm not even thinking about college, right? Like
Mhm.
all of that is like just like that is just that can be difficult to cope with in a sense, like and
It is.
yeah,
And I
well, yeah,
I remember Sasha's friend, the one whose family's all Princeton, 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 and everything was Princeton, and she didn't get into Princeton. And I mean, now she's very happy where she is, but on the other hand, I think at that time, it must have been so hard for her to feel like, that she had nothing but Princeton gear in her house. Like, they had Princeton pillows and Princeton chairs and all this sort of stuff. And so, I don't think anyone should really lean into a school for any reason too much.
Definitely, I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think like you don't want to tire doing do something that is out of your control. Like
Mhm.
obviously, like it's perfectly fine to support a school or rep a school.
Right.
Yeah, being involved with the school however much you want to be. Obviously, as a parent, like there are things you can do to um to really assert that it's their own path.
Mm.
Whatever happens, you can be proud of them and that they'll be happy where they go. I totally would have been happy, I think, if I went to another school, any other school that I was considering during the
Mhm.
process.
Mhm.
Because I did have some good options, which I'm lucky to have had. So
Would
yeah.
you have gone to USC had you not gotten into Duke?
Um, yeah, I think that was that was what I was looking towards, really, like, when
Mhm.
those are my options. So,
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, like, that was my number one option.
Mhm.
So, again, like, that's just the reality for so many people,
Mhm.
and, basically myself included, where, like, you just maybe you don't get into your top choice per se, but you tend to get into another great school that you're happy to have gone into that,
Mhm.
was difficult to get into, and, like, it just it doesn't reflect anything about you as a person, you as a learner, you as a student, so
Is there a lot of peer pressure? Do you feel that at school with your classmates in terms of like who gets into what or people being judged because of the admissions or where they get into?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, it does vary from school to school, but I think in general in my school, Dwight, it's not that big of a problem. Like, I mean, I think if anything, it varies more grade by grade, like between the level of cutthroatness or like
Mhm.
general
What's your grade
the
like?
general approach. And I think my grade is we're not too cutthroat. I think it's pretty good. Like, I think we're an incredibly competent grade in terms of in terms of our abilities and like, obviously that I feel like almost like our admissions from this cycle reflects that like, this has been one of the most successful years for Dwight and like
Mhm.
yeah.
Do you know anyone in your class who did not get into a school they really wanted to get into or any school like, even if it some, that they were disappointed with the results of their college admissions and how have they dealt with that?
Um yeah, I mean, I think so. Like it's like I mean, I'm honestly I don't I've barely I really don't try and pry too much into other people's
Of
business over this,
course.
but yeah, but like totally like I think I've yeah, I've definitely seen that play out. Well, obviously yeah, like there's disappointment, I haven't necessarily been, like, super close with someone who might have gotten, like, super devastating news, like,
Mhm.
particularly to them. Obviously, there are people who have had, I've known some people who, like, maybe have been disappointed by certain results or certain
Mhm.
decisions, but,
Mhm.
um
There was a kid in a private school up in was it New Hampshire or Massachusetts who killed himself because he did not get into the schools he wanted to get into.
Phillips Exeter, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that terrible? Do you think that that's self-inflicted pressure or pressure just brought on by parents or both?
Well, I think it's usually almost always both in those cases, like, 'cause you know, it's both nature versus nurture because like when you kind of when an expectation is engendered into you from like a young age maybe or just over maybe over even the course of high school like when especially when you're again in a very I think a lot of it depends on the kind of openness of the environment you're in. I guess maybe in a boarding school even it can be more difficult because
Sure.
I mean I don't haven't been in boarding school but like I imagine that environment might be more
Yeah, your parents are around, other people aren't around.
that might be more that might be more insular. Like
Yeah.
you don't feel like you have anyone you can talk to outside of this space, outside of this context. When there's so much else to talk about, and there's so much more out there, and there's so much more to think about besides just an admission decision. But like, yeah, I think parents in general can also
Mhm.
should be very careful to like, again, just make sure that their child's experience is their own, and that
Mhm.
they are fully aware of the realities and just the randomness of the process as well.
I remember now maybe you could describe the emotions you felt when you applied ED, you got the deferral for that ED decision from Duke. We were all there as your family. Tell me about that moment.
Yeah, I think that moment was, yeah, obviously disappointing, but and I think it's different because like it's your first decision. It was the first decision I got back at least. So
What were you thinking?
and yeah, so like I think linked to the build up, I was just like I was very nervous, but at the same time, again, I was just keeping in mind like okay, I think I have a chance. I think that but obviously like it's kind of different when it's not a binary result. Like it's oh, like, if it's deferral, like, that's, like, in the middle, like, it's intermediate, like, you can't there's no specific set path for what to expect and how you're supposed to feel, I guess, in a sense.
Mhm.
So I just knew that I was either gonna be, disappointed or happy, and, going into when I just got that kind of disappointment, I was like, I was pretty it's upsetting, but, like, also at the same time, it's like, when I have time to reflect on it after, you can be like, "Okay, yeah, since DD, like there's so many things left to do. There's so much work that I put in that is going to be reflected now elsewhere because of new decisions that are going to be coming back to schools and to tons of schools that I'm super interested in and I love and I love to go to. And so like it's just I think if anything, just the waiting is difficult. Like because when your number one choice is not gonna is gonna be literally is going from the first to the last decision that comes out. Like
Mhm.
that kind of anticipation builds up way too much, I think, and like that's just is so kind of difficult to handle. But especially maybe didn't apply to as many schools, and like because there's so much more news left. There's so much more things
Right.
to focus on and worry about.
Right.
So it's ever not gonna be stressful, and it's ever not gonna be disappointing when things don't go your way like that. But
How do you manage that time? Because, like you said, it's a long period. So after you got the deferral, you did get a bunch of positive news with other admissions, but you're still, like you said, waiting for the whole process to play out. Especially since, like you said, Duke's admissions decision at the end was one of the very last ones. Um, it is a very, 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 very stressful time at that time. So advice on how to sort of deal with that, and try to keep moving forward.
yeah, so I think that again, you have to contextualize it. You have to realize that it's just one decision in a long list in a long process that you prepared for. Like you like you applied to multiple schools because you're prepared for any outcome. You're prepared for. You're trying to account for any possibility. So um
Did you use anything to help lift you up or make you feel better or get through it?
Um, I mean, not really. Yeah, you just kind of deal with it. Like, it's not the end of the world. Like, you're not dead. Like, it's just like, but obviously, like, yeah, like, everyone knows what this feels like, what it can feel like, what kind of bad things can arise, what kind of emotions you're going to be feeling. And, people deal with it differently. I think for me, at least, the way I just kind of dealt with it is just, um, realizing how competitive the process, especially the E process is for so many schools like that. Just, again, it kind of just says back into reality. It's not like, it doesn't mean anything about other decisions. It doesn't mean anything about you. It just means that things didn't go your way this one time, and you can hope for the best, and you can. But obviously, there's more things to look forward to in the immediate present, and that and so like yeah, so you have to kind of do a mental shift. Definitely, you have to you have to explain to yourself like yeah that this is okay. And now this is going to be a longer process. Like you're not going to get immediate gratification. Like there's no quick ending to this. Like it's gonna be something that you have to deal with. There's gonna be more stress, it's annoying, but again, at the very least, your applications are in. There's nothing you can really do about it right now, so you should mostly just focus on enjoying what's ahead of you and, realizing that at the very least you have the power of choice. So that is something you have to keep in mind. Like you can't be too fixated
Mhm.
on one out. You can't be too fixated on one outcome or one trajectory that you're looking forward because
Mhm.
there's so many different factors that now matter in a sense. So like, and I think again, Sasha going through the exact same trajectory was super important or helpful because like
Mhm. You saw that.
yeah, because I can see her disappointment, but also her looking forward to new things. Hopefully getting good news back that
Mhm.
and just realizing that again, it's now it's a long game, but
Mhm.
that's stressful. But
Mhm.
again, and it is kind of like an undertone among like under the other things you're doing as a student, but it's again it's also out of your hands now.
Mhm.
So yeah.
I almost forgot. I was going to ask you before during your study habits about advice you would give students in terms of sleep pattern and habits. I've seen both like you do really well with your sleep patterns, like this past week, actually, I think you did. And then in the past where your sleep patterns were really disjointed and like not probably optimal for like what you were doing. So how do you try to manage your sleep and what do you do to try to do your best in terms of sleep?
Yeah, I think a lot of it stems to how motivated you are to do all the sleep. Like it just, obviously, but
Are
against,
you not motivated?
well, sometimes I can be, sometimes I can't be. Like, and it varies more than it should probably. But like, I guess I think speaking like in general terms, like, yeah, obviously you want to have good sleep habits. You want to be consistent with your schedule. You want to get enough sleep, especially as a kid every night. We hear this so much. It really grates on your nerves at some eventually. But like, it's just but obviously, like, I know, like, I think most kids I know but that's the thing. I think most kids I know probably don't, adhere to a consistent schedule, don't get as much as they, scientifically should. That's why there's so much rhetoric around this and why there's so much, fear mongering news and like there's just like so many advisory warnings like that. Yeah, kids aren't getting enough sleep. But yeah, and we're not like that's just how it is. Like I and like, but obviously, like we want to be striving. At least me personally, I want to be striving towards making it better. And I've had good moments, bad moments. Like there's inconsistencies all the time. And a lot of it is also circumstantial. Like it's not sometimes it's just because like you have like a busier week in terms of schoolwork or athletic load. I'm like that just inherently makes it more difficult to adapt and then account for those changes if you're not if you're not again motivated to make that change.
Is there any tip that you have in terms of trying to get better sleep, like that you've done?
Uh, I'd say that actually I think managing eating is probably good. Like your times of
Really?
your eating times, yeah. Like you making sure that like you don't over you eat at good times. Like you have consistent not like necessarily 3 meal a day thing, but like you have consistent like time for dinner, things like that. Like I think that actually
I
psychologically,
think you do eat pretty regularly.
yeah, I agree consistently. I'd say in terms of dinner at night,
Yeah.
and also I think getting good like shower routine as well. Like
Oh, yeah.
it seems like a little arbitrary, but
Do you shower at night or in the morning?
I usually do both actually. So
Okay.
like yeah, but yeah, I think it's just all about kind of about putting sleep in terms of that wider routine that you're used to,
Mhm.
because that helps your circadian rhythm, but
Mm.
also that conditions you to expecting a routine. It kind of facilitates that process because like when you have a routine with other things that
Mhm.
ties into sleep as well.
So let's get back to, so you went through the whole process. You got into a bunch of schools, including USC, which would have been a real choice for you. And then the last day where you opened up the portal and you got that acceptance from Duke, what were you thinking before you opened it? And then what were you thinking when you opened it and after you opened it?
I think well, I mean, it was a pretty rough week when it before because like it was the last week of break. It was the last week of spring break for us, but last week of spring break. But I was also very sick for that entire week, pretty much. So so like that kind of anticipation was a little difficult to handle, I guess. Like, and just kind of almost felt like I didn't really have time to live through it, kind of, and like just really be in a good state of mind and be kind of be present in the moment because everything was my whole body clock was messed up and like that. But, I guess I was still able to tell myself, like, yeah, I am pretty nervous, but, at the end of the day, like, it's about you. And I think something that Josh said actually was super helpful was like, when she called me about it, she was like, this is good. When this session comes out, it's gonna be time to celebrate you, no matter where you go, and because that just means that because it was last session, so that means the process is done. So once it comes out, regardless of what the outcome is, you'll know what school you'll be going to in a sense. So the process will be over, the stress will be over, the anticipation. So that actually was super helpful for me in like contextualizing this and seeing the bigger picture. But obviously, like, yeah, it's nervous. It would be for anyone, I'm sure. And I was pretty nervous leading up to it. I almost didn't feel like I had enough time to prepare mentally for it. But again, I also realized that that's kind of ridiculous to say because like you're just like reading a quick outcome. Like it's nothing meaty just changing at all. There's like nothing that you have to prepare for. It's just about making sure that I don't know, just deal with it that you deal with it properly. You go in with the right mindset, you come out with the right mindset. So, leading up position, I was nervous, but um, yeah, I was just glad that I was glad that I had worked out everything in my mind, I guess, beforehand, and that I could, um, and then again, the process was going to be over regardless, regardless what happens. So that was a great reassurance to me. I was just lucky enough to be able to get into schools that I was super happy to go to. Before that as well. That reassurance is super helpful. Not everyone has that for sure, but at the end of the day, everyone's gonna opens the decision in the same way. Everyone understands that this is such a like such a transient process. Like you open it, that's it, it's over, it's done. Like you now you have to deal with consequences. But I think everyone kind of by working that on my mind, what it meant for what each outcome would mean for me, working that ahead of time, that helps. And I was very lucky to be able to have my desired outcome come true. Yeah, so.
That was crazy. I had a hard time actually believing it when it first happened because I was trying to prepare myself for it not to happen and be prepared for that outcome.
Yeah, because I think it's like when it comes to like people saying like, yeah, expect the worst. Like, yeah, you can do that. Maybe sometimes I have done that because like it maybe helps temper your expectations. Like it feels like the disappointment will be lessened. But like
Mhm.
also at the same time, like if you have a chance, like there's no reason to. I feel like it's almost better to just almost hold like both perspectives simultaneously. Like, yeah, I
Right.
have a chance, but if I don't, then I understand.
Mhm.
Maybe it'll disappoint. I'll be sad, but it's just something I have to deal with and something that I know I have tools to deal with. I have people around me to help me. I can, view this in a better context. I can see the bigger picture. I can know that I'll be happy. So it's like, it's just like, it's weird to have so much of your expectation determined by like one like single decision or
Isn't that
something.
crazy? Yeah.
But at the same time, that's kind of the reality of the process.
Mhm.
And I guess again, that's why you have to balance everything. Make sure that and you make sure you're thinking about it the right way. You're not too set on one thing. You're not gonna be so set in the school or something to have your expectations and just crash down because again it's out of your control. So you need to adjust your way of thinking around that,
Mhm.
and just be appreciative of what comes your way.
That's a very mature thought process, and that's pretty amazing. And I know I can hear Sasha in my head already saying, "Well, I knew he was going to get in the whole time," like, which is what she was saying beforehand. Um, so now you're going to be starting at Duke in as a freshman in the fall. So what is it that you are most looking forward to in terms of being a freshman in college?
I think honestly just the open-endedness. Like I think the open-endedness and like the ability to kind of have so much more freedom than 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 anyone expects. And like that's kind of what most kids say initially. That's like your initial reaction to what college life is supposed to be like. But also the amount of resources that that will be available to me to kind of just shape my path, to be the ability to like actualize my learning so early on, and just just have decisions from majors, like to have the opportunities, meet new people, really, um, really envision a greater academic journey for me. Like that is just super exciting. And doing on Duke's campus, it just makes it all the better. And like having all the resources there, everything that they have, and of course everything, the school culture and everything around that is amazing. And um, being in such an environment where that's super supportive, it's super nice, super aesthetically pleasing, but also you have everything at your fingertips kind of. And you're gonna be it's gonna be challenging. There's gonna be a lot of difficulties, maybe some bumps in the road, but and academically it's gonna be probably maybe a difficult learning curve in some aspects. But also the fact that all people to go through it with can be able to see so many places, meet so many people, and just in general have fun also while doing it is just in a great atmosphere is just gonna be super great, I think. And having the best, having world class um access to sport at my fingertips is just gonna make it so much easier.
In retrospect now, as parents, don't hold back. Is there anything that we did that you thought was particularly helpful during this journey? And then anything that we definitely could have done better or been more aware of or could have been more supportive about?
Yeah, so like uh, I'm not 100% sure. Like I think like I think you guys honestly did a pretty much as well of a job as any of you guys could as any parent could, when it comes to guiding the child through the process, being there, but also, minimally invasive, I guess, like, and, just doing everything, being the presence that is needed as any parent wants to be, but also, ensuring that your child is aware of what kind of responsibilities lie on them and, and you're helping the child deal with the pressures, helping them deal with, any kind of difficulties, whether it be academic or otherwise, and just, always being willing to face whatever problem there might be. That's all super good, and I think you guys did an amazing job with that. And like, um, I think maybe if you want to do anything differently, like you could, I think your point maybe about like keeping, maybe I mean, like, it's kind of out of your control. Like, maybe keeping if you're a fan of a school, like keeping it out of the child's purview in a sense, like can help. Like it's obviously kind of out of your control, seeing as it's not something that like is forced on us in the context of college. It's just something that happens to be related to that, as you grow up in this reality of college faces you. And like, but maybe yeah, that could be something that parents maybe stray away from. But at the same time, again, it's kind of out of your control. But at the end of the day, but also like, making sure that your child is um, aware of the realities, of course, and is just emotionally mature enough to accept whatever comes their way, and but also to do everything they can to try and make the process easier for them, to carry their mindset into it. That is what's always important, and I think you guys honestly just did a great job with that.
Thanks.
And I mean, of course, having a sibling to go through it ahead of me, I mean, that was probably harder for her honestly than it was for me. So like that is just, that helps tremendously. Like yeah.
Well, if I had to do it again, I'd be a Knicks fan, and instead of having Coach K stuff, I'd have Thibodeau stuff or Patrick Ewing stuff instead. But you're right. Thanks, I appreciate that. Any last words of advice for anyone who is in high school? Maybe they're struggling, maybe they're about to face the college process and it looks so daunting. And just hearing about, seeing their older peers or anyone else going through it and saying, this is just, I feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think that there's more advice I'd give, especially since it's so fresh in my mind, I guess, is just to, um, and enjoy being in the present in a sense. I kind of enjoy that it's almost just kind of background music because looking back, I almost think to myself, like, how was I not more stressed at certain moments of the process? Like, how was I not feeling more daunted and feeling more intimidated? But I also realized that, of course, being in that moment, like having everything in front of me, having so many things to worry about outside of the process, and just think about and enjoy like that. Obviously, is just that kind of keeps you going. That keeps you going. Like, that is super important to have. Like having just having systems of support, people you can talk to, a way to distance yourself from the process. So that is very important. But also when it comes to just dealing with it directly, like it's having the fact that we can have variety in the schools that we apply to is just so important because it's again it just to try and depolarize the process as much as possible to make it not a binary, to make it not feel binary because that people can fall into those thinking traps. But just making sure that you're not over dramatizing it. You're not putting too much weight into one thing. Obviously, that can be difficult depending on who you are and the kinds of schools you apply to. But in a sense, I think for me, just realizing there's always more ahead, realizing it's a long process. Kind of even if, yeah, I mean, like it could, at the very least, it can be a long process. It depends. And again, realizing that everyone's going through the same thing and that your stress is not exclusive and that, regardless of how you want to cope with your stress, you can always have that reassurance that, um, it doesn't define you and that nothing that comes out of this is going to say anything about you as a person that you didn't really already know. So, um, the thinking beyond like, I mean, that's a very philosophical way of thinking about it. But, in general, just knowing that you're going to be okay and that, the stress that comes your way, it's normal. So, um, so as you go through this process, as, it kind of peters out or picks up, you have to just worry about other, worry about other things first, obviously. But then obviously as things wind down and things get kind of climax, like, it just comes down to, being secure in yourself, realizing that it's about you. So how you feel is most important, basically about it.
Thank you so much, Nick.
Thank you for having me on the show. Appreciate it.